What is up, guys? TopTierYugioh here, and today I want to show you the Dogmatika Ritual control deck in action with some test hands, because this deck has the ability to go toe-to-toe against the top decks of the format, but you have to see how the deck plays in order to really understand how, and that's exactly what I'm going to show you in this video. And so we've got some test hands, and then I'm going to also show some combos, discuss the deck, win conditions, deck building, and more. And so you do not want to miss any of this. Let's get into it. So for this hand, we've got pre-prep, White Knight, a second pre-prep, Dogmatika Calamity, and Artifact Scythe. So this is actually a pretty good hand. It does sting that we have 2 copies of pre-prep, and it is a hard once per turn, but this does give us access to everything that we need to start our play. And so we're just going to start by activating the pre-preparation of rights. And we're going to hope our opponent doesn't have an Ash Blossom, because we'd lose if they do. Well, not really lose, that's really rough to say, because even White Knight, Dogmatika Calamity, and Scythe is a pretty good play, because on your opponent's turn, the White Knight can send a copy of Intis to pop the Scythe, trigger that, and then lock your opponent out for a turn. So worst case scenario, we still have a play, but it would be nice if the pre-prep goes through, because with that, we can search a copy of, let's see, Dogmatika Macabe, and then with that, a copy of White Relic. And so as you guys saw in the deck profile, the main setup for your combo that ends on both of the ritual monsters is having both ritual spells and then Relic, and that will usually allow you to get to both of them. But we also actually have White Knight too, which makes this even easier. And so the play from here is to activate your Calamity, using Calamity to summon Relic by sending Herald to the graveyard. So summon your Relic. Let's see where to put everything. But you guys know where everything is. No zones, but you guys see. Herald will allow you to search. And in this case, because we already have Cambrai, we also already have White Knight. I think what's best to search is Illusion of Chaos, which can get us to Souls, and then help us get rid of the dead pre-prep. And also it sets up the Macabe play. Macabe. I looked it up. It's Macabe or Macabe, depending on American or British English, so it's Dogmatika Macabe or Dogmatika Macabe, whichever you prefer. But now that we have the Illusion of Chaos, we can reveal this in hand, shuffle itself back into the deck, add Souls to hand, activate Souls effect to summon itself by sending the second White Knight to the graveyard. And now we could send a the Illusion of Chaos to the graveyard, but it's really valuable to actually have a White Knight in graveyard, because Dogmatika Macabe can summon from the graveyard. And so what we can end up doing is activate Dogmatika Macabe later on, not right now, but we can ritual summon this Knight from the graveyard by tributing this Knight in our hand. And that makes it a lot easier to summon versus having to summon the one from hand and then having to tribute monsters on the field, which obviously we don't want to tribute these monsters. Souls is fine, but it's not high enough level. And then we don't have the monsters in the graveyard from the extra deck that we can banish to equal the level. And so that's why we want to send the Knight to the grave, so that we can summon it back from the grave. So that's why we make this play. And so then now we can activate the Souls effect, because we did have the extra copy of pre-prep. And you could save it for next turn, but it's just easier to do this now. You never know what you might draw into. So Souls effect, discard the pre-prep, draw into a Sanctum. Wow, easy. And so then from here, we just activate the Dogmatika Macabe, like I said, and then we tribute the White Knight in our hand to ritual summon the White Knight from our graveyard. And now that we have both White Knight and White Relic on the board, we can use the other effect, or the full effect of Dogmatika Macabe, and we can use that to send a Titan to the graveyard. We could also look at the opponent's extra deck and send the card from their extra deck to the graveyard too, but I think it would be valuable in this case to also set ourselves up for next turn. And so we can set both our Sanctum and our Scythe, and then during the end phase, we can use the Ash Dragon to search an Ecclesia. You could search Fleur, but because we already have like Scythe and Sanctum, or I think this is the Scythe, but because we already have ways to stop our opponent, we don't really need another way to stop our opponent, but rather we want a way to follow up on next turn with more pressure, and Ecclesia allows you to do that. So we're going to go ahead and search that. You could also send another Ash Dragon on your opponent's turn with the White Knight. But you don't want to depend on that for your follow-up, because you never know what happens. Your opponent could have a droplets. You don't want to depend on what you're doing on your opponent's turn to be able to play on your next turn. Not a good strategy. So this is the end board, and then on the opponent's turn, we are going to be able to, when they special summon, send the card from their extra deck to the graveyard. When they activate a card or effect, send the card from both players' extra deck to the graveyard. So we got a lot of interaction. We also have the Scythe and the Sanctum. So if White Knight resolves, what you could do is send Intis to pop your Scythe and trigger that, or you could just summon it with the Sanctum. Either way, when you have Scythe Sanctum, you're usually pretty good. You just have to play around droplets like that. Don't play into it. Don't like activate Sanctum in the standby phase and they just droplets your Knight in your Scythe. Then you lose. Don't do that. But if you play it right and play around droplets, definitely winnable with this hand. Okay, so before moving into the next hand, I do just want to briefly discuss the game plan with this deck, and then how we generally go about winning games, and what the playstyle is like. And I'm sure you saw a little teaser of it with that first test hand. You've seen it in the deck profile, but I just want to discuss it a little bit as well to put it out there. But you win with a strong mix of extra deck disruption as well as traditional disruptions. And so you have your Knight, your Relic, sending cards in your opponent's turn from their extra deck to the graveyard, and then you have Maximus and Macabe doing it on your turn. And then you also have cards like Punishment for destruction, Fleur de Lis for negation. And then you've got Floodgate monsters as well with Scism summoning Winda, and then your Artifact Scythe, which you can summon with Sanctum. We don't play Dagda, we just play Sanctum and Scythe, but we can destroy Scythe easily on our opponent's turn to trigger it as well. So Scythe, like hard drawing the Scythe itself, is good. And I would say a general board that you're ending on is similar to the one that we had before, where you're going to have Relic, you're going to have Knight, and then likely a Fleur or a Punishment. One of the two, usually a Fleur. And then if we have Punishment too, I'd say it's definitely like an auto win hand, like most decks cannot play through that. And then obviously if you have Scism or Scythe, your opponent cannot play through that either without like a droplets or something along that lines to deal with the Winda or Scythe. So let's say your opponent's going up against the board of Relic, Knight, Punishment, and then Fleur in hand, and they're playing Phantom Knights. So let's just take a look at how that generally would look. So let's take a look at what this Phantom Knight deck can do against our main board of Relic, Knight, Fleur, and then Punishment. And it's kind of hard to say because let's say on our turn we use Macabe to look at their extra deck and send something to the graveyard. That will put us at a huge advantage, but let's assume that we don't do that and that instead we dump an Ash Dragon to search that Fleur, and on the opponent's turn we just start disrupting them from there. And so let's say they first started with a right, because that makes sense to try to set up a Griffin before doing anything, but Knight actually counters the adventure token stuff very well. And so they activate the right, that gets them a token, and then they also can get their Fateful Adventure on the board. Well, now they've activated a card, and so that triggers Knight. We can use Knight to send an Intis from our extra deck to the graveyard, take a look at their extra deck, and decide what to send from theirs. And then the Intis can pop the token, and that just shuts off their whole adventure engine. It also takes away a link material from them. But looking at their extra deck, you have to think about what the main threats are. And so you have to think about the Break Sword that can pop the Punishment. That's really good against Punishment because destroying it just triggers the effect. You have to think about Zeus because it can wipe your board and put a ton of pressure on board. You gotta think about Anaconda and DPE. Rusty's not too bad because it takes a lot of them playing to get to a Rusty. Like, it shouldn't get to that point. But then also Access Code Talker, which if it does get to that point, they can OTK you maybe, so that's spooky. And then of course DPE and Cherubini, which gets them a lot of advantage. So you have to think about what cards in their extra deck you have to, worry about and start taking those out or forcing them into plays that would not be good for them or plays that we can stop. And so I think first what you might want to do is, well, Zeus is a big one, but Breaksword might be better because it's what gets them to Zeus. But I think Zeus is usually a pretty good pick in this matchup, as well as Cherubini, because Cherubini just gives them a ton of advantage. And let's actually do Cherubini, because if they're going into a Zeus, they're gonna know it. Like, Zeus does not come out of nowhere. And so we'll send their Cherubini to the graveyard and then use our Entis to destroy that token. So then from here it's like, well, what did they do? They've already used their adventure, their right, so they can't use normal summon monster effects. And so they'd have to normal summon the Torn Scales, no effect. special summon the boots. But now that they've special summoned, it's going to trigger Relic's effect. And so now Relic allows us to look at their extra deck and send another card to the graveyard. And so now that they've commit to the board, you can think like, okay, what can they do with these level 3 monsters that scares us? DPE is not going to come out of nowhere. They're going to go into an Anaconda first, but we have Fleur. None of these matter. They can't just pull an access code out of their butt. Unicorn, they need another monster. And so I think what we might want to do is just go ahead and get rid of the Break Sword, because Levier takes a little bit more setup, and again, if they go to battle phase, we can just destroy it, or just destroy their downer when they make that. So I think getting rid of the Break Sword is actually a pretty good move here. So now the opponent has to think, like, what do they do with these cards? Like, Dasher doesn't do anything, the Cloak doesn't do anything yet, Temple's dead, and so, like, what Link 2 do they make? We don't have any Darks engraved. Dagda, like, does nothing against this deck. They would likely be forced to try to go for either Anaconda or Levier. And so let's say they do go for Anaconda. They would link both of these away into Anaconda. Activate Anaconda's effect. Pay 2,000, send for cost. And then we just activate the Fleur to negate it. So they've gone through a ton of resources now, and we still have our punishment. And they can still play as well. And so they might activate Boots effect, banish Boots, and then search maybe Fogblade. Then that can trigger Torrent Scales. Torrent Scales come out. And then now on the summon, you might want to just go ahead and destroy the Torrent Scales so they can't use the effect. You don't want them discarding that Fogblade or discarding some other monster in their hand like the Cloak that they have. So here you could go ahead and use that punishment. And then it's up to you how you want to use this. Like, you could send Intis with punishment and then destroy both of their monsters. Or what you could do is send a Ash Dragon to start setting up for your next turn. It just depends on how you think the opponent might play this out, because they've already gone through a lot of resources. But leaving the Anaconda on board is kind of problematic because it is a Link 2, and then once again they would only have to put 2 more monsters on board in order to get into an access code talker. It's also dark, so 1 more to get into a Rusty. You don't really want to allow them to do that, and so I think you might want to send an Intis and then just destroy both of their monsters. So now from here, it's like, from the Phantom Knight point of view, they've normal summoned, they've got 2 dead cards. All they can really do is set this Fogblade and pass. And then you're playing against the Fogblade. Like, not bad at all. And so that is generally how we win with this deck. It's just a matter of looking at their extra deck, determining what the major threats are, then either eliminating them or forcing them to play into the cards that you can deal with your Fleur or with your punishment or whatever else that you have access to. And now if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to like it, subscribe to the channel, and click that notification bell so that you are notified when new videos are uploaded. Hope you guys are enjoying it, but let's go ahead and get back into some test hands. Alright, so in this hand, we have Dogmatika Macabe, Punishment, Diviner, Called By, and then Maximus. And so this hand is really good. Whenever you have 5 different cards in this deck, you've got some plays. And so the Diviner plus the Macabe already is a pretty good setup. And then the Maximus also gives us another search with Herald, and can also set us up for a window play. And so pretty strong hand here. The way you want to get started is definitely just with the Diviner. And so you want to start by just normal summoning Diviner, activating the effect, send Herald to the graveyard, and then Herald will allow you to search a copy of, you can either go for Relic or Dogmatika Calamity. Either one really works. You're going to get to both of them either way, but whichever one you see first in the deck. And I like Calamity, or yeah, I like Calamity a lot because it's the hardest card to search in the entire deck. And so searching it now works. It's only searchable by Herald pretty much. And that stinks. From here, we want to link away the Diviner so that we can just get it. You don't want a diviner just sitting on board. It could be valuable because the level is raised up, so it could help you ritual summon your knight later on. However, you also don't want to get locked out of your extra deck, not needed to summon knight, and then have it sitting on board. So I typically like to go for Almirage here, just so you also get that protection from the Almirage as well. So now from here, you can, let's see, we could just banish the Herald to summon the Maximus, but let's actually link away the Almirage in the Secure Gardener, and then banish the Almirage, and then we'll have the Herald in the graveyard to help us summon our knight later on. And so go for the Secure Gardener, banish the Almirage to summon our Maximus, activate the Maximus effect, and we can send a second Herald and then Apkalone to the graveyard. Then Apkalone and Herald will trigger. This will allow us to search our copy of Relic. And now the tricky thing here is that when you search your Scism with the Apkalone, it's like, what do you discard? You want every single card in your hand, and it's maybe irresponsible to discard Called By. However, if you've gone through this point and you've resolved the Diviner, you've resolved multiple Heralds, you're resolving an Apkalone, your opponent does not have Ash, they do not have Veiler, they don't have anything that you're stopping with the Called By, and so it actually wouldn't be too bad. It feels bad, but at this point, it likely isn't terrible to discard the Called By the Grave. And so, search Scism, and then discard the Called By the Grave. So now from here, we can activate the Calamity to summon our Relic. Calamity can send another Herald. And then that Herald can search a copy of Knight. Activate your Macabe, and then Macabe can banish the Herald, and you can do both Heralds or Herald. Yeah, let's just do both Heralds. We got 3 in here, so banish 2 of your Heralds, summon your Knight, and then you get the second effect of the Macabe. So again, because we have the Scism and the Punishment, you might be fine not sending something from our extra deck to the graveyard. We also have the Maximus for follow-up next turn. Like, if they don't clear this, they're in big trouble because you start sending Intis, clearing stuff, sending more copies of things to get more advantage. Their extra deck is getting thinned out, so we've got some follow-up. We've got good defense with the Punishment, the Scism, both of our rituals, and so it might be good to send something from the opponent's extra deck now. And so now they lost 2 cards for Maximus. We're getting to choose one now, and then they're losing 2 more on their next turn, and so that is 5 cards from their extra deck. A third of their extra deck is being destroyed. That is difficult for a lot of decks to play through, especially when you're choosing 3 of them. And so this would be a pretty good end board. The only downside with this is that it does play into Nib, and Nib is being played a lot more often right now. You also have to worry about Lancia as well as Droll. We did a lot of searching, so Droll is big, and we needed those banishes for both the Macabe and Maximus summon. So you have to keep those in mind as well. But, you know, as a test hand against a faceless opponent with no hand traps, this is a good board. And now the one thing I do want to mention is that with the Scism, you have to remember that you cannot summon from the extra deck while you have Knight on board. You also cannot summon from the extra deck after resolving Punishment. And so really the only way that you have to actually get to your window on this turn is to use your Knight to send Intis and then destroy Knight itself. So now he's no longer on the board. Then you can use Scism to summon your window. So that is something to keep in mind as well. If you have Fleur, Fleur can negate Knight and then you can summon Winda. But that is one slight contradiction that this deck has that I'm not a big fan of, but it is a big advantage of the Dogmatika engine that you do have access to Winda and just being able to floodgate your opponent. But something else that you could do instead if you don't want to play the Shaddolls, which is understandable, is instead of sending Apkalone to search Scism, well, what you could also do is send the Ash Dragon to search Fleur, obviously. But you could also have send a Barren Blossom to the grave to get an extra draw just to dig into your deck, maybe get to an artifact or another high impact card like Nadir Servant, Prep, or Pre-Prep. you could have also sent Omega, because we've gone through a lot of resources. Like we sent all of our heralds to the grave, so shuffling one back sure would be nice, or shuffling back a ritual spell that we could search. There's a lot of options that we have there as well. And so if you don't want to play the Shaddolls, you could also go for those plays. And as you saw previously, like Fleur, punishment, and both rituals is usually enough. Oh, also, I do want to briefly mention that I did make some changes to the main deck. In the deck profile, I'm playing 2 copies of Lord of Heavenly Prison, but after not reading the card correctly and then doing some more testing with it, I've come to the conclusion that it is not high impact enough for this deck, because it's only useful if you have, or pretty much in this deck, only useful if you have a card that you can activate on your opponent's turn while it's revealed, and then it can set like a Nadir Servant, Prep, Pre-Prep, or one of your high impact spell cards. But it requires you to have a set card on field like a punishment or a schism, and you don't always have that, because punishment is usually dependent on you hard drawing it or searching with Ecclesia, and sometimes Ecclesia has to be used to search for a ritual piece. And then schism almost always depends on Macabe resolving or a Maximus, and if those happen, you're already winning. And so Fleur, or not Fleur, but Lord isn't quite as necessary either. And so I found that it just doesn't do enough, and so I took both copies out of the deck and then replaced them with more engine cards, such as the 3rd copy of Calamity and then the 3rd copy of Punishment. I wanted these cards specifically because they're both very difficult to search. You want them in your hand, but it's hard to search. Like you have to use Ecclesia to search punishment, but your Ecclesia is often searching other ritual pieces. And then Calamity cannot be searched by pre-prep. Pre-prep can only get Macabe and then either of your ritual monsters. And so to get Calamity, you have to either resolve Ecclesia or Diviner Sin Herald or Maximus Sin Herald, but those are the only ways. And so because these are so difficult to search, I wanted to add extra copies to really make our searching more flexible. But also, you'll notice with Calamity, and you'll see in these test hands, Calamity is usually the first ritual spell that you're playing. You need it to get your plays going, whether you're summoning Relic, sending a Herald to search more pieces, or if you're using it to summon Knight, send a level 8 monster, and that can also set up your Macabe to summon Relic. You need Calamity first. And so I wanted to be able to draw it more often. And now while we're talking, I do just want to mention the basic setup of this deck. And so usually you want like a Calamity plus a Relic, and then either one of your Macabe or your Knight, and then you'll just search whichever one that you don't have with like a Herald that you would send off of this summon. And so what Nadir Servant does for this deck, and I forgot to mention in the deck profile, is that because both of these have 500 attack, you can send Herald with Nadir Servant to add one of your ritual monsters, and the Herald can also add one of your ritual spells. So Nadir Servant is a 1-card ritual summon, and then if you end up searching like Calamity and Relic, you summon that, send the second Herald, then so let's say we Nadir Servant, send Herald, and then we add Relic, then Herald, add Calamity. Then we summon, activate Calamity, summoning the Relic, and then we send a second Herald for that. That can add like either Macabe or Knight. If we already had one in hand, then we can go ahead and activate the Macabe, banish both of the Heralds, summon Knight, and then get the full effect of Macabe. And so Nadir Servant actually, when added to any of these cards, is like full combo by itself. So Nadir Servant's great in this deck. Again, it does stink that it's down to 2 now, but when you do have it, it simplifies your plays so much. But you do have to keep in mind that if you already have access to this engine, to your ritual engine, then you could go for an Ecclesia to get punishment, or a Maximus to start disrupting your opponent's extra deck, or to get to Apkalone and Scism, which can get you to your window. And so when using the Nadir Servant, you really have to think of which part of your deck you're going into, the ritual side or the like punishment / Schism Shaddoll side. For this hand, we have Ecclesia, called by Schism, Prep, and then Calamity. And so this hand is pretty good because we do already have the Schism. That means we don't have to send Apkalone to do that. But also we have Ecclesia plus Calamity and then Prep, which can search any of our ritual monsters. And of course you can't search Knight directly, but you can search Illusion of Chaos to get to Souls, and that can get to Knight. So we've got access to pretty much everything we need in this hand, except for punishment, because we're going to have to normal summon our Ecclesia and then use the effect to search for a ritual monster. And so we're going to start by normal summon Ecclesia, search a copy of Relic, and that's going to set up our Calamity. So now from here, we can activate Calamity and then summon our Relic by sending a Herald to the graveyard. And now Herald will allow us to search a copy of Dogmatika Macabe. Now we could go for a ritual monster here, but again, because we have the preparation of rites, we don't need to. And so instead we are just going to activate our prep, and then prep can search Illusion of Chaos. And the reason I want to go for Illusion of Chaos here is because once again, it can get us to the souls, which can get the Knight in Grave, which we can summon back from the grave with the Macabe. And so that's the play. We also can use prep to add back the Calamity, which would be a great discard for the souls when we summon it. And so go ahead and activate Illusion of Chaos. And something else you can do sometimes is keep the Illusion of Chaos in your hand. That way it's good that you contribute it for the Macabe to summon the Knight later on if you want, because this is level 7, Souls is level 1. You tribute the Souls on board and the Chaos in hand to summon back the Knight. That's also a play. However, in this case, we're gonna have enough in the graveyard and the field to summon it, so we don't really need that. And then I want to have more cards in hand to discard for the souls to draw into more pieces. So Illusion of Chaos, reveal and shuffle itself back into the deck. Search your copy of souls. Summon souls by sending your Knight to the graveyard. Then we're just gonna shuffle because we will be using that souls effect for sure. And that's one thing I really like about this deck, is how searchable Illusion of Chaos and Souls is. So even though we're just playing one copy of each, we have access to it in just about every single hand if we want it. And it easily just gets these extra dead cards out of the hand and allows us to set up for more plays. And so what we could do with this is discard the Calamity and the Schism. And then if we can later, we can just send Construct to add the Schism back, which is fine. So discard both of these for the souls. If the opponent has like a hand trap, we've got the Called By still, so we're good. So draw into a second Calamity and Punishment. The Punishment's good, but Calamity's obviously dead because we've already used it. And so from here, we're just gonna go ahead and activate our Macabe. And for the Macabe, what we could do is banish the Arclight, tribute the Ecclesia, and then ritual summon the Knight out of our graveyard. And then now, because we control Knight and Relic, well, Relic and Knight, we can use the full effect of the Macabe. And we have a couple options here because we do have Schism in Grave. And so we could just send the Construct here and add back the Schism, and then we're gonna have access to the Schism as well. But again, we are locked out of the extra deck due to Knight being on board. And so that's a tricky thing to keep in mind. I think the better play is to go ahead and just send Ash Dragon, just to have that set up for our end phase. Then we can set Called By Punishment. End phase Ash Dragon will add a copy of Fleur. We could also summon Ecclesia and then do Fleur. Either way works. Well, no, we can't do that because we normal summon Ecclesia, so just add Fleur to hand. Don't forget your normal summon. And then this would be our end board. We'd have both of our ritual monsters, Punishment, Knight. We got the extra souls, but that's fine. And then we also have Called By, which can be used defensively. And if our opponent hand trapped us, we could have just negated the hand trap with the Called By. And then we also have the Calamity for next turn. And then also on your opponent's turn, you do have the ability with either the Punishment or the Knight to send a second copy of Ash Dragon, which can get you another Ecclesia, and again, to help you follow up a little bit more. For this hand, we've got Relic, Punishment, Diviner, Sanctum, and then Ecclesia. Once again, when you have 5 different cards in this deck, you're going to have a good time. And so, Diviner plus Ecclesia is already really good. Adding Relic to that as well just makes this a pretty easy hand to play out. Sanctum is just cherries on top. Oh my goodness, this is a good hand. So, you can even play through hand traps pretty well too. Like if Diviner got stopped, that would be fine. But you want to start by normal summoning your Diviner, using the effect to send a copy of Herald to the graveyard. Oh, something else I do want to mention is that Construct is a fairy too, and so you can also send Construct sometimes to like add back a Schism that you discarded for a Souls, or just in general, it's good to know that you've got other cards to send other than just Herald or Entis half the time. But use Herald to search your copy of Calamity. Then from here we can go ahead and link away the Herald. We can go into an Almirage, and then Almirage and the Secure Gardener. The reason you want to make this play is, well, it does play into Nib, but the reason you go for it is so that your Ecclesia can search a Maximus, and then Maximus can start disrupting your opponent, and then also just getting you more and more advantage. So that's the play there. Next, we want to activate your Calamity, using Calamity to summon your Relic, and send a second Herald to the grave. Oh, I forgot to say, yeah. And then you also don't want to banish your Heralds to summon the Maximus that you're going to search, because you want both of these engraved to summon your Knight later on. So that's kind of important. But then now the Herald can be used to search a Macabe. I don't know why I shuffled, because we're just going to special summon Ecclesia here and then search that Maximus. Now we can summon the Maximus by banishing the Almirage. And now activate the Maximus effect. And then with this, you want to send your third Herald. This is a 3 Herald play, but it's pretty cool that you can resolve 3 Heralds in a turn. You want to send that, and then you also want to send... you do have the option to send Apkalone once again, but there's nothing you want to discard in your hand. Like, you don't want to discard your punishment, your Sanctum, or your Macabe. You could discard the Scism and send Construct later to add it back, but that's a lot of work. I think sometimes the better play is just to send your Titanclad and have that ready. So then from here, the Herald will search us our copy of Knight. We activate the Macabe, summon the Knight, and then we can banish both of our Heralds. Don't banish the Ash Dragon, because we can use the effect during the end phase. And we can resolve the secondary effect of Macabe. And now that we have Ash Dragon in Graveyard, we don't really have anything in our extra deck that we want to send. And so we can look at the opponent's extra deck and start disrupting them from there. The one option I think that would be good here is maybe Omega, just to get a start on recycling cards. Blossom wouldn't be that good because you already have great cards in hand. So I think, if anything, Omega. If not, just look at your opponent's extra deck. Also, notice that we do have Omega in the deck right now, and that is because this is a test hand video. This doesn't have to be the official deck list. It's some slight changes, like I am playing the Omega, the Dark, just to test them so we could discuss like when they come up. Because they do come up. But yeah, look at your opponent's extra deck, send the card from there to the graveyard. This gives you a ton of information on what they're playing and what you can send in the future as you can start guiding them into certain plays. But then you set your traps, end phase Ash Dragon, add your copy of Fleur to your hand, and then you're good. This is a pretty solid hand. This is very strong because we've already used Macabe to disrupt their extra deck. We resolved the Maximus, so they're already down 3 cards in their extra deck. You're gonna get rid of 2 more. You've got the Punishment, the Scythe, and the Fleur for disruption. The Scythe, worst case scenario, locks them out of the extra deck. This is a tough board to crack. Now, one thing you do want to keep in mind though is that we've already got 4 monsters on board. Fleur and Sanctum both summon monsters to the 5th monster zone. So you have to be careful because you don't want to use Fleur and then not be able to use the Sanctum or be forced to like use a Knight or Punishment to clear a monster on your side of the field. So that's something to be wary of. If you can just win the game with like Knight, Relic, Punishment, Sanctum, that's good enough. Hold that Fleur, and then on your next turn you can use the Maximus to send Entis, like clear maybe the Relic off the board because it's low attack, less impact. Summon your Knight, and that puts way more damage on board because Knight, Ecclesia, Maximus, and Knight, Ecclesia, Maximus, Fleur is 8,000. And then you would also have the Scythe for an extra 2,000. So you'd have over 10,000 on board. For this hand, we've got Dogmatika Macabe, Pre-Prep, Triple Tack, Nadir, and a second copy of Triple Tack. 2 Triple Tacks kind of sucks, but having it in the first place is really good this format when there are so many hand traps everywhere. And then again, we've got the Nadir, which once again gets us to everything that we need, and then Pre-Prep is also huge, and the Macabe. And so I think the way this hand starts, it's first by just activating the Pre-Prep and seeing if it resolves. If it doesn't, we have the Triple Tack, and that would draw 2 cards into Fleur, Diviner, which is good. But it starts with the pre-prep, and obviously we don't know if the opponent has a hand trap, so we have to assume it resolves. But with that, we would get our copy of... We'd have to get a Macabe at least. And then either Relic or Knight actually works in this case. Because our hand is so strong, we could go either way. But I think Relic is usually a pretty safe bet. Because we also have extra dead spell cards, such as the triple tack, the second triple tack, and the second Macabe, we have things that we could discard for a souls. And so instead of searching Knight, we could search souls, or not search souls, but search Illusion of Chaos to get the souls that can dump Knight. We can get rid of these dead cards, and then also have access to Knight. And so I think the play is to get Macabe and Relic here, because we don't need to have the Knight in hand once again. So let's just organize the hand a little bit here. So then from here, we can't ritual summon yet, so we have to go for the Nadir Servant. It is risky that we put ourselves in a position to have to resolve a Nadir Servant to play, but good thing we have triple tack, right? So activate Nadir Servant. I think here we don't necessarily have to set up a like a ritual play immediately. Like we don't have to search Knight, or we have the Relic in hand, so we don't need to send Herald, if that makes any sense, because we have a bunch of ritual pieces already. And so instead, what I think is best is to try to set up a Maximus, and in that case, we want to send something that we don't mind discarding or banishing to summon that Maximus. And I think for that, Apkalone's a pretty good choice, and then we can add a copy of Maximus to our hand. Apkalone will trigger. We can add Scism to hand. And we could discard the Scism or discard something else. It doesn't necessarily matter. I guess it might be better to discard something else. That way we're not like too dependent on resolving our other effects later on. So let's say we discard talents. We don't need two. But then we can banish the Apkalone. Special summon the Maximus. And then activate Maximus's effect. And then with this Maximus, we could send... or not could, but we will send a Herald, and then we could send Ash Dragon, but we can always send Ash Dragon later. We might want to send something that's actually usable up front. And at first I was thinking like send the like discard the Schism and then send Construct to add it back, but if we kept it, it doesn't necessarily matter. Or maybe that would be the play, yeah. So discard the Schism earlier, and then just send Construct here. And then Construct can add back the Schism. That's actually fine, yeah. And then the Herald will allow us to search our copy of Calamity. And now from here we can get our ritual plays going. So from here we activate Calamity, use Calamity to summon Knight, or not Knight, but Relic, and then dump another Herald to the graveyard. Now Herald will search us our copy of Illusion of Chaos. Chaos will reveal itself, shuffle itself back into the deck, and that gets us to Souls. Souls will summon itself by sending Knight to the graveyard. And we've got a lot of spells and traps that we can discard for this Souls effect. A lot. But at this point, we can assume our opponent does not have Ash. They don't have Veil or Imperma. They would have negated the Maximus. And so our Souls is good. We can go ahead and discard Triple Tack and Macabe. Draw two cards, Diviner and Prep. Diviner is solid. We could use it, but we don't really need to right now. It's better to probably hold for next turn for our follow-up. If we need to start breaking the opponent's board, we can summon this, dump Intis, and then have a play like that. And the same with pre-prep, or regular prep. We don't really need another ritual monster in hand right now, or another ritual spell. And so it's probably better to just hold for next turn, and if the Souls stays on board, these extra cards is a free, like extra spell and traps in hand are free, free draws next turn. So from here, all we need to do is activate our Macabe, and then go ahead and summon that Knight. And we can do so by banishing both of the Heralds and Graveyard. Now the other thing that we do want to keep in mind here is that well, first let's finish resolving the Macabe. So, we can send Ash Dragon here. But yeah, so something you want to keep in mind is that for the Schism, once again, we've got Night on field, so we can't summon from the extra deck. So you would have to use the Fleur that we search with the Ash Dragon during the end phase to either negate the Night, or you have to use Night to send Intis and destroy itself. Or your opponent just has droplets and they droplet the Night. Either way, or some kind of way, you have to be mindful of how you're going to resolve the Schism. You just can't, like, use it. But either way, this is a pretty strong hand. It is unfortunate that we had so many dead cards, but it's still a strong hand. Like, we're ending with 5 cards on board and 5 cards in hand, so we went +5 on the turn. I'd say that's usually pretty good. Alright, so in this hand we've got 2 Diviner, 2 Triple Attack, and Servant. That is unfortunate, because 2 multiples is not fun. However, it's a thing that happens when you play a lot of 3-ofs. And again, Nadir Servant is a 1 card almost your full play, and then Diviner can just search whatever you're missing. And so we can start by activating Nadir, or no, don't start with this because then you're locked out of the extra deck. So start with Diviner, and then use the effect to send Herald to the graveyard. And then Herald can get you to Calamity, or really any of your ritual cards. It doesn't necessarily matter. But then with the Diviner, go for a Almirage. No need to go for Secure Gardener in this play because we're not going for Maximus, so it doesn't necessarily matter. This doesn't play as hard into Nib, and then also you have Almirage for protection, so that's always pretty good. Now from here we can activate Nadir Servant. Nadir Servant can send a second Herald, and this can add our Relic. And then the Relic can add our copy of Macabe. So now from here, we can activate Calamity to summon our Relic, and then this will use our third Herald. Going through these Heralds pretty quickly, but they're very important. And so from here, what we can do is use Herald, and we could search Night here. However, we've got a dead Triple Attack, and so instead we can turn that dead Triple Attack into a draw. And so we are going to search Illusion of Chaos, reveal itself, shuffle itself back into the deck, get to Souls, summon the Souls by sending Night to the graveyard. Now another thing to keep in mind is that this is our 4th summon. We had the Diviner, Almirage, Relic, Souls. Night will be our 5th summon, so we will be vulnerable to Nib with this hand. That's something to keep in mind too, so you have to consider whether or not this extra draw that we're going to get off of the Souls is worth maybe playing into a Nib. If this is a game 1, you really might see Nib in your opponent's deck. If it's game 2, they probably, well, maybe not probably, but they maybe sided them out, so it might becomes more safe there, but you do have to consider with some of these plays you are vulnerable to Nib. But we do have Triple Attack at least, but we're going to discard one of them for the Souls and draw into a Night. Not bad, not good, but either way, we can activate our Macabe. We've got 3 Heralds in grave, so we can banish 2 of them, summon Night, resolve Macabe's other effect, dump an Ash Dragon, and then during the end phase, get to a Fleur. So, not the strongest hand. We only had Nadir Diviner pretty much, but we are still able to end on multiple disruptions with the Night, the Relic, the Fleur. It's still pretty good. We've got the Almirage for protection from card effects. And then on our next turn, we've got Diviner for follow-up, we've got a Night, and then Triple Attack. And who's to say if our opponent hand trapped us and we activated Triple Attack, you never know what you draw into with that. Like, maybe you draw pre-prep Ecclesia or like something stupid like that. And now, of course, with that Nadir Servant, we did have other options. We could have also used this to get to Maximus, or use this to get to an Apkalone, and an Apkalone can go for Scism. We could have gone for that type of play as well, but I felt that this play is more fun. But let me know what you guys think about that, actually. If maybe I played this handout incorrectly, if there was something else that you would have gone into. You definitely had some options because we had Nadir Diviner. But if you do go for like a Maximus play, because the rest of our hand didn't have any ritual pieces, the diviners were essentially dead and we had 2 of them. So we'd be playing with like 2 dead diviner, 2 dead triple attacks, just Nadir Servant. So we could like dump Apkalone for the Nadir, search Maximus, or no, you don't want to send Apkalone there, but maybe Fairjet actually. Send Fairjet, search Maximus, maybe draw into something off of that Fairjet, shuffle back a brick, summon Maximus, dump Apkalone, and then you could dump Herald there, yeah. I guess that would work too. And that could get you to Knight. Yeah, let's actually run through that real quick. So what we could do is, yeah, so Nadir Servant, dump Blossom, and then use the Blossom to search for Maximus, or Ecclesia Maximus, but usually better to not do that. Blossom effect, that's pretty good Blossom effect, or Blossom draw. You put back either Diviner or Triple Attack. The Diviner's better follow-up, but Triple Attack is a potential discard for a Souls play. But then from here, summon your Maximus, activate Maximus's effect, and then with that you could go Apkalone for sure. But after that, now we have to think like, all right, we've got Diviner, we've got Prep. If we send Herald, that gets us to the 3 ritual pieces that we need to pull off the full ritual combo. And so that's actually an option. At first I was just gonna say we could send Herald and add like a Knight. This could add a or this could send Herald to add Calamity, and then we could just have Knight, Calamity, send Titanclad, so we'd have Knight, Fleur, and then Scism. But this works too actually. So yeah, send the Herald, Apkalone, Herald, so we can get Calamity, and then Scism, discard a useless triple attack. We probably should have summoned the Herald first actually, just to get that on the board. I was doing this so quickly, but let's just say we had done this previously. Or we could do it later, we just won't have All Mirage, but either way. So if we did this properly, we would have linked this to an All Mirage, but I think you guys understand the point here. But that's the part of test hands that make it so fun, you know? You can go back and forth and go back and discover what the right plays would have been. So then from here, activate Calamity, summon Relic, send another Herald. This Herald can get you to your copy of Macabe. Yeah, Dogmatika Macabe. From here we activate the Prep. And then Prep can get us to, once again, this comes up so often, I love this interaction in the deck, but you get Illusion of Chaos, reveal itself, shuffle itself back into the deck, get the Souls summon itself out by sending Knight to graveyard. Like it's such a useful interaction, and then also being to ritual summon from the grave. I love it so much. So now from here, oh, and then the Prep also can add back Expel, so you can add back Calamity, which we no longer need. So you can activate the Souls effect, and you could definitely discard Calamity. You could discard Scism and then send Construct to add it back, or we could send the triple attack, but I do feel that that's sometimes maybe a little irresponsible doing that, because if they like nib you at the end of your main phase, yeah, get wrecked. But you have to assume at this point they likely don't have as many hand traps left. So for the sake of example, let's discard the triple attack and the Calamity for the Souls effect. Draw 2, Fleur and Knight, and then from here we can just activate our Macabe. Summon the Knight from the graveyard by banishing 2 of our Heralds. And fully resolve Macabe. And from here we could send Ash Dragon if we'd like. But we do already have the Fleur, so it's not as important. We could look at the opponent's deck. Or we could send in Omega to start recycling resources to set us up for next turn. Like, we could shuffle back Nadir into our deck to give us a higher chance of drawing it. We could send back a Herald so that we can combo a little easier next turn, or search a Macabe, because once you have access to both of your ritual monsters on board and or in grave, and extra deck monsters in grave, it's very easy to just summon them back with Macabe. And so that's definitely a play as well. But you need the Herald in deck to search the Macabe, because we used our other 2 Heralds, so we have no Heralds left in extra deck. So Omega's an option, but I do like Titanclad searching that follow-up. That can be big. And so then we could just set Schism, in phase, search, Ecclesia. And so that is the alternate play that we can make with that hand. And of course that depended on the Blossom drawing us in the prep, which gave us an extra draw because we drew, or it allows us to get Calamity from the grave. It also got us to Illusion of Chaos, which could search our Knight, which we ended up summoning. So it definitely worked in a very favorable way, but that's sort of a big thing with this deck. Like, Blossom can just draw you into stuff, or Souls can just draw you into stuff. And again, I think the worst case would have just been using Calamity to summon a Knight that we search, and then like search earlier in the combo. Like, Maximus resolves, we send the Herald searches, we end up with Calamity and Knight, Calamity summon Knight, dump Ash Dragon, and then we just have like Maximus, Knight, Schism, and then Fleur in hand. Like, that's decent, but this is like where it can go when you draw really well off that Blossom, if that makes sense. We've got Calamity, Diviner, Chaos, Pre-Prep, and Fleur. This hand is gonna depend on the Pre-Prep resolving, but if it does, we're gonna be in a pretty good position for this game. So activate Pre-Prep, and with that you wanna search Relic and a Macabe. And you don't need to search Knight because we've got access to it through the Souls, obviously, through Illusion of Chaos. So then from here, we can go ahead and get Diviner on board. That way we at least have it on board, can link it off, and then be done with it. However, we don't necessarily need to use it in this hand because we do already have Calamity, Relic, and Macabe. So we already are in a good position. But what we can do is use to search an extra ritual spell that we can discard for the Souls. So that's always useful as well. So it gets us an extra card into our hand. And so activate or summon and activate Diviner's effect, dump Herald, and then let's search a second Calamity. Searching a second Calamity because we play 3 of those but only 2 Macabes, and so we want to keep a Macabe in deck for a pre-prep in the future. So now we can link away the Almirage, or link away the Diviner into an Almirage. And then activate our Calamity, using that to summon Relic. And then we will send another Herald to the graveyard. And then we can use that Herald to once again search a ritual spell. So then from here, we can activate our Chaos effect, reveal itself, shuffle itself back into the deck, get access to our Souls. Souls is going to send White Knight. I'm going to go ahead and just dump it now to summon itself. Also, again, similar to a hand earlier, this is our 4th summon, and so our Knight's going to be our 5th summon. So if we did want to play around Nib, what we could do is just not make this play and instead use that Herald to just search a White Knight. That would have also worked, but this is just the higher value version of that play. So activate Souls, discard 2 Dogmatic Calamities because we don't necessarily need it at point. Now, this would mean all 3 Calamities are in graveyard. However, after you get access to both of your ritual monsters, you only need Macabe to summon them from graveyard, and we still will have another Macabe in deck that we can use, and we're still gonna have the 3rd Herald that we can do to search it. So we're pretty good to discard both of these Calamities for Souls effect. Draw 2, Maximus Scythe, pretty good. Oh, that changes things. That makes it a little spicy. So we could use Maximus to let's see, what would we want to send with Maximus? I mean, we could send Omega, Ash Dragon, like the things that we want in grave, Omega, Ash Dragon, and Apkalone. those are the cards, and I guess not really Blossom. So we want Omega, Apkalone, and Ash in graveyard. And we have 3 things that we can send. We have 2 with Maximus, and then another send with Macabe, if we'd like. But we could also just use Macabe for 1. So let's see. Yeah, we can go for the Maximus play, because that, I guess, would be the best way to do this. We also have to think about what we would discard off of the Apkalone, and if we'd want to discard the Scism and then also just send a construct later to add it back. So, and that would just mean we're not sending Omega, but that would be fine. So we could use Maximus, use the effect to dump Titanclad Apkalone. Apkalone can then add Scism, discard Scism. Activate our Macabe, use that to summon our, there it is, our knight from the graveyard, and then we can, let's see, banish Herald, and then also the Apkalone, and then we're gonna be sending Construct, and so we'll still have a Shaddoll in graveyard. And the Macabe doesn't have to banish the levels that equal the monster it's equal or greater than, so that's fine. Resolve the full effect of Macabe. Dump Construct, add back Scism, and then we can set Scism Scythe, and then in phase use the Ash Dragon to search our follow-up, being Ecclesia, for next turn. Now, you could also argue that we didn't need to send the Ash Dragon because we already had Fleur in hand, and so we maybe didn't need it for this board, but it does get us follow-up, which can be important. And then also, the Ash Dragon is a dark monster in graveyard to fuse with, instead of having to fuse away our souls. And so this is a pretty good inboard. And now, of course, it depended on resolving the souls effect to draw 2, but we did put ourselves in position to draw 2. We set ourselves up for that. But even if we didn't use that, we would have had a pretty good board. We just wouldn't have had, like, the Scythe and access to window, which is fine. We had enough disruption anyways. Or we still could have used Macabe to send Apkalone and get access to window that way. But of course the Maximus made it just easy. But really that was just a bread and butter play. It was very easy to do, and once you really understand how the deck works, you can make these plays all the time. And when your bread and butter plays can stand against the top decks of the current metagame, you've got a good chance to win a lot of those games. And so definitely give this deck a shot. The deck profile will be right here on your screen, and so check it out because I give a detailed breakdown of every single card in the deck, as well as cover a few basic combos that weren't in this video. And so thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.